Hi, this is Franz Cantor, caricaturist, cartoonist, illustrator, toon talker. I'm here with
Jim Bridges, and I'm the president of the Australian Cartoon Museum, and we just happen to have John Spooner. Hello, John.
Lovely to be here, thank you.
What we're doing today is a book review on A Spooner in the Works, The Art of John Spooner, introduced by Robert Mann, and it's published by, who is it?
Text.
1999.
In 1999.
It's a long time ago, John, in your career, wasn't
It's
it?
the end of the millennium.
Yeah, okay. Good stuff.
We'll just put our finger over the price.
Mark down.
Why is that grey?
No,
That's a bad
stylistic.
sign.
It was designed by Chong Wing Ho, a wonderful designer.
Oh, I'd have it black.
Yeah.
Okay. First picture.
Oh, well.
Kim Beasley.
Kim
Humble pie. He's eating humble pie.
He's not eating humble pie, he's eating mid-labour.
Yes, he was. He was not doing what he should have been doing.
Yeah.
I mean, this book really is a comment in many ways on the past. You know, the period 1987 to right through to the year 2000, and of course in that period, the whole economic policy of the country changed. There was a revolution, and it was started by these two guys who, in the end, hated one another and were blaming one another for the adverse impact of some of their policies.
And that's how Howard got in.
It was also the beginning of the internet revolution,
Yeah.
because you look at this thing of people,
Virtual
being wedded to the internet in a way that they hadn't anticipated, and that was trying to sort of anticipate the loneliness of a potential loneliness of that revolution. Anyway, what was this thing that the Keating government did? Well, they introduced
Awkward stuff.
an economic policy which we called in this country economic rationalism.
Yep.
And they did it by with the assistance of the labour movement under the leadership of Keating. Now, this was a radical change, and it could not have been done, in my opinion, by the Liberal Conservatives. It had to be done by the Labor side of politics.
I could never do anything like this. You have to be a real political animal to understand, even to illustrate.
Well, he had a love affair with the press. The press were uncritical, in my opinion, uncritical supporters of this radical change.
Yeah.
It was exciting.
The grand vision.
And they were really happy to endorse it and to push it. I felt, and along with a tiny minority of economists, felt that there was some extreme hidden dangers.
Blind leading the blind.
Yeah, well, it was deregulation, free trade, all these things which
Getting into
other countries,
territory.
well, in many ways, we were doing in an
Sorcerer's
extreme.
Apprentice.
Well, this is it. Here we have Keating as the Sorcerer's Apprentice with his book of deregulation, and it's just being taken over.
Yeah.
And I felt that's what happened.
Yeah.
When he called the Banana Republic speech,
That was the beginning of the end.
people forget why he did that. Why? What did he do? He was doing it because our current account deficit had blown out. That's the gap between what we spend and what we earn. And they couldn't understand it because all the modelling that went into these policies basically predicted the opposite. Yet the ego survived. I mean, Keating, they all did some wonderful stuff for the Aboriginal movement and other policy initiatives. But on the economy, they were destructive.
Yeah, that's as a standalone. That's absolutely beautiful. That whole pose and the expression.
Keating declared himself the Placido Domingo
That's
of
what
politics.
I would call condensed genius. That is beautiful.
Placido Domingo was one of the great opera singers of the time.
Yeah.
This is an etching I did. It was based on an illustration. The same illustration was a takeoff of a famous Dürer etching called Melancholia.
Yeah.
And the idea of Keating as this angel in this arrangement of symbols as a failed angel who had basically tried to architect a major change. And then suddenly we're plunged into this terrible recession. We're in
a Dickensian time.
Well, not even Dickensian, it's sort of elemental.
But wasn't that all over the world at the same time?
Yes, but we had 22% interest rates because we were trying to dampen down the economy, and we were the only ones to go full bore in free trade.
Okay.
No other country in the world apart from New Zealand, maybe Hong Kong, went full bore. We were unilateral. We didn't care what other countries did. We did. All the other countries reduced tariffs like we did, but they kept their non-tariff barriers to control the impact on their industries. We lost 1,700 factories. In that period.
I know.
I mean, it was just
They're
incredible.
not facing the reality.
Well, I thought the left, in a sense, were obsessed with the sort of the posture
The
of
posture
radicalism.
of
That's the Russian left. That's the Russian left. That's not the Australian left.
But they didn't want to see the consequences, which is ultimately the great problem.
That could be Australia. It could be
and I
Banjo
thought
Patterson or something.
The Labor Party, this rabbit, was facing the calcivirus virus of the new right, and it didn't know what to do. It was paralysed.
Yes.
Because
Well, what was happening in England with the left?
Well, in England, the same process was being introduced by Thatcher.
Yeah.
It was called Thatcherism.
Yeah.
And in America, it was called Reaganomics.
Yep.
In New Zealand, it was called Rogernomics. Right? But even in England and in America, they didn't do it as unilaterally as we did. We were these sort of like Boy Scout purists. We've come to be called the Taliban of trade. That's what we're called. That's the nickname for us.
These are lovely caricatured portraits of Gough Whitlam and Graham Richardson.
That's got colour in it, or one of the pictures you did
that's
of
black
him.
and white.
No,
Yeah.
one of the pictures you did of him had yellow in it, and I suddenly understood. I said, yellow is the colour of corruption.
Well, anyway, it was all a period of extreme experimenting, and there's Kelty.
He's the bad guy.
And he's experimenting with deregulation, privatisation, another thing, we sell off assets, free trade. At this period, our foreign debt was $193 billion. It's now $1 trillion.
Yep.
We are the 12th worst debtors in the world. We have the 5th worst current account deficit in the world.
So
right
he
now.
was the
John Button was the industry minister.
He
never. I just
You
don't
didn't
think he
finish
ever
drawing.
got
You didn't finish drawing that, John.
And he got Kelty rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. As a
a
sign.
lot of lovely references to popular culture and children's books and history and
there's Kennett.
Yeah.
See, Kennett then took advantage of this.
There's your animal caricature reference.
Kennett took advantage of this ideological door that had been opened, and he became this great privatiser.
Yeah.
And Keating was secretly, or not at first secretly, but eventually secretly, endorsing this process. And here's one of the tragic victims.
Yeah.
Because here's John Cain, who was a genuinely good man, whose policies was quite sensible.
Yeah.
I mean, he went down basically because his investment arm, the DC or whatever it was, they were loaning money to businesses.
Look at this.
And he went down for $56 million. That was the problem that they saw.
But
So you have to look at the symbols or the analogies that you're drawing here with the
Hydra.
rescue of Hercules, the Hydras, Costello and
Didn't the
Howard,
Hydra have
Cheryl
3
Kerner.
heads?
Whatever. Who cares? There's John Kerner and a meat and a sandwich, a debt sandwich. And there's poor old John Cain being burned at the stake. And really, he understood what was going on, but he was powerless to stop this. When you have federal Labor against you, and you've got the Liberals taking the full advantage.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Joan Kerner, when she left, she legalised casinos.
That's right.
I'll never forget reading the mayor of Miami saying, "We're not going to have casinos in Miami." Where they whitewashed the mafia's money.
Let's get into
He
Jeff
said,
now.
"I'm not having Miami go down what Atlantic City went." the way the Atlantic City went.
Yeah.
And where we went it.
The wolf and the sheep.
Yeah.
The praying mantis.
Yeah. And the poor punters.
Yep.
Small government. No, nothing on the shelves.
Yep.
All you've got is they've got a lot of surplus shelves.
Mm.
Kenner became a very interesting figure because when you start selling state assets, you have to be confident and you have to really be aggressive. You cannot appear to be half-hearted or anything like that. And he went
because
for it
you're
hard.
making drastic decisions. You have to be like a Labor are always the ones that have big placards.
Some people did well
I
for
thought
good reasons out of this.
What do they call them? Social.
I thought it was called the Balti Bridge.
Well, he was the one who did. The thing is that some of the money that they got for these privatisations were put to good purpose. For instance, the State Library had never been funded since Judge Barry was.
Yeah, but wasn't that John? That was John.
They say the state librarians say that Kennett was the guy who understood how to fix it.
Okay.
Cool.
And then, of course, as a result of this, where the workers were getting nailed really hard by these policies, these macroeconomic policies, then Howard gets in, and he basically thought, what they want is more.
Yeah.
I must have got in because my policies were so great. They were rebelling. The voters were rebelling against what Keating had done. Howard interpreted their vote for him as an endorsement of these policies, and he pushed even harder. He wanted to sell Telstra.
Yeah. And then she's come back again.
And then, of course, under his watch, you have the emergence of this grassroots extremist sort of conservative.
She was a
position.
liberal. She was a liberal. He could have.
No.
He could have squashed her pretty early.
Yeah, but she also had this crazy things about Asian being swamped by Asians and stuff like that. It was just sort of, here we are, John Howard in it, unfortunately going to a party.
A date.
And the party's got all these Nazis and Ku Klux Klan people and everything like that, all welcoming them, and it's a rather uncomfortable
He's being dragged
union.
into a very uncomfortable party.
Yeah, exactly. And so joblessness in that period became a very big issue, and
Here he is preaching to the converted.
And also, if you want a small government, but you want some money, you've got to have a GST, and they had a GST.
That's lovely.
And so he didn't like the response of the public to his arguments.
Yeah. You're all on detention.
As a conservationist at that time, my feeling was that he
Did a
wasn't
botched job of it.
wasn't quite right. There were some interesting characters in that period.
Yeah. Rafted Medusa. This is the one you were mentioning before.
Oh no, this is another. I've done it. I've used it. I've used that Rafted Medusa image because it's such a beautiful symbol. And here's Australia sort of looking for help from China. As it turned out, rather presciently, I might say, that is exactly what ultimately gave us some relief in the last 10 years.
A reference to Drysdale?
Drysdale, and the death of regional Australia, casinos and free trade with the National Party and Easy Bank here, and the only people left are the ones that were originally playing the game.
Yeah.
Who were kids?
I can't even remember what that was about, but the emergence of the financier group in this country. And these people that would come into a company and just sort of chop off the workers.
Look at that employee. There's a beautiful symbol. It's just a tool.
I think I was sort of, people were perceiving me at this stage as being a rampant sort of communist, but really I was in favour of saving industry, because industry, 50% of services in any modern economy come from manufacturing.
Yeah.
So you kill manufacturing, you ultimately kill everything. I like doing this drawing, I don't know why, but the idea of the jobless as being the one that doesn't get it, the chair at the end of a
the
musical.
metaphor works
This
strongly.
is a beautiful metaphor of the Joey looking up to its mother, and the mother is really a vulture.
And the new Asian tiger.
The new Asian tiger is full of imported goods. And people, there's nothing wrong with importing goods. The question is, can you ultimately pay for them.
The richness of the symbolism is astounding.
And same with downsizing of everything, and decline of government revenue, placing extreme pressure on the public hospital system. Well, here's a guy doing his own
DIY.
operation.
You did it a couple of times.
Did I? Oh, sorry.
It's
Just sinking ships and...
There's a whole lot of cascading events that happen as a result of making these radical changes to the economy.
Yeah, but you kind of clarify and simplify with the use of symbols, which make it very, very solid in the brain, in the reader's mind.
I hope so. I mean, it's very
Because
hard.
the articles can be very wordy, as they are. Journalists are wordsmiths. But to be a visual journalist, you're actually tapping into something that is extremely powerful.
Windsor Homer, is it?
Yeah.
No, but I'm telling you, that was one of my favourite. Not because it said much about anything, except that how difficult it was to get jobs.
Yeah.
And getting jobs was like trying to catch a whale with a net.
Yeah.
But the thing about these opportunities as an editorial illustrator is that you just love. I'm so happy to have got the chance to do this picture, and like this one, to try and express what the problem with globalization is that it becomes the baby that is so huge it's going to sort of drain its own mother,
A lot of people didn't get that.
Big
a lot
baby
of people have asked me,
cradling the mother.
what's that cartoon about?
The problem with all this is that the narrative, the great economic narrative, which we call the Great Reform period, right, of the last 20 years, is not well covered in the press, and not well covered in the media. There were just a few dissidents. My uncle Bill Weeks, Martin Field, some of Tim Colbatch, some of Ken Davison, but these people were all kind of on the periphery. The mainstream of the economic dogma that was coming through infected everything in politics. So everyone came to think, oh, well, it was a great success. We became a rich country. Sure, a rich country that owes $1 trillion to the world. How can it be rich? Anyway,
you used this theme a lot of times, how Australians would never listen to Hitler.
Well, I still kind of think that. I mean, if Hitler has to go down to the beach to deliver his speech, it's going to always be a problem for that extreme racist kind of ideology.
Yeah, I think we're too lazy.
Maybe
to be extreme anything.
And this was an illustration about our attitude to mining and how we protect the interests that are, just
the
excavating
the
wealth.
miners,
We're not adding any value to it.
No.
Most people who do that thing, they actually have a great big hole in the middle of Australia, but you have that all around it.
Well, we're trying to preserve something, and in the middle of that,
you have an epic scale every so often. You have a big sense of epic scale, which cartooning doesn't really take on.
Oh, well, it's very kind of you to say that. For some reason or other, I love the idea of the Queen and her dogs at the back of the Republican debate.
She's not even involved. She's just sort of on the horizon.
Now, this is on the issue of migration. How I use the John Brack just to change the faces and things.
John Brack is a famous Melbourne artist.
I like doing that one because I think it's important for people to realise what people have come from when they come to this country. There's a man with the boots still strapped to his back, The law.
Oh, the law, fantastic! Here we go.
There are
the ship of fools.
Well, this is about cutting funds if you're cutting funds for legal aid, you end up with sort of imbalances in the process.
Yeah.
Here's this guy wanting to shoot, the prosecutor wanting to shoot the duck giving evidence, the judge trying to feed the duck, and the defence lawyer trying to stop the guy firing. That was because in a trial, when you have inadequate representation because there's not enough legal aid funding, you'll get imbalances where the judge has to start doing things which, what jury thinks, well, why is the judge intervening in this process? It must be because this point is important.
This is
someone in the room has a sense of
very
justice.
timely image of
the boys' club.
Patronage of the patronising attitude.
It was very hard for women to get into law.
Men's club.
This is one of those areas, euthanasia, where I was offside with a lot of people and still am.
Yeah.
Not because I can't understand the compassion involved in it. I can understand why people want to have euthanasia. The problem for me was the safeguards. How do you stop someone successfully persuading by pressure for an old person who's using all the funds of the family, and that old person is someone that they all hate? People don't have enough imagination. Now that, to me, says, all right, well, we need a safeguard. What's the safeguard? The safeguard is they have 1 hour interview with a psychiatrist, and he will say whether this old person really knows what they're doing or whether they're just sad. And that's not enough. We wouldn't.
True.
You need 2 people.
It's too difficult. It's a grey area. It's the other interesting thing where I was offside with people was on the question of sentencing of murderers. And to me, this is one of my most important illustrations, because it's when you are offside with your own readership that you kind of sometimes think it's important that I do this right. So I've got 3 drawings of a grave. The first one is it's a fresh grave. This is a victim on the day the murderer is sentenced to 18 years jail. The second one is the victim 14 years later when the murderer is released. There's a few more gravestones around, still flowers there. Third one, the grave is in slight disarray, it's old, it's overgrown, and this is the victim 30 years later on the murderer's 70th birthday. My point was that 14 years jail, which is the average time spent by a murderer in jail in this country, is a strangely inadequate form of justice. People say, oh well, he's been rehabilitated. Who gives a shit whether a murderer has been rehabilitated? He's not going to do it again. He's already done it. It's a sort of, I just feel that you should start with throwing the key away.
Also
obviously very strong.
Because you love drawing clouds again.
I love drawing clouds.
It's very poignant too.
And there are the origins of violence. That I feel very much so that this issue of child abuse is often the core. The impulse to hurt women, I reckon, could possibly be, and we still can't prove it.
Fist is now the head.
I'm just saying that you could.
Gives you the impression that from a very was that like representative of a child? So from an early child, that tension, that the propensity to violence.
Well, what I'm trying to say is that in pre-verbal childhood, if a child is abused, they absorb that, but they have no consciousness of what they've absorbed. So it may be that they then carried out that later on.
I just realised this is one illustration, isn't it?
No, two. Just linked
were these
together.
used together?
No, separately. So there's a child that's.
Actually, one of your most powerful pictures was just shadows. You have a father who's about to raise his hand to the wife, and the wife is about to raise her hand to the child, and the child's about to raise it to the smaller child, and it goes down to the cat or the dog, and it is so powerful. And yet you just see the shadow.
This is one about rape, and I was trying to emphasise that rape leaves marks on people. Often people say, well, why are you putting this girl away for so long? Because she's recovered, she hasn't been killed, she's just been raped. Well, the rape leaves marks. And this was on child abuse in the priesthood, and the idea of a dangerous animal accepting. And this is a therapist. Well, people get to wash their hands in the brain of the mind of the therapist. The therapist sitting there, and that Sheila.
But don't they go to other therapists who clean them out too? Isn't that how it
Maybe
works?
they do.
And there's your virtual relationships.
And safe Christmas with 2 little condoms on them.
Santa will fill them presumably.
Friendship.
I think
my friends would probably.
I think that's a great metaphor, because when they're younger, they might fight against each other, but then they just become locked in. And I think one of the great loves in the world is friendship. That's longer lasting than a lot of love.
As I get towards older age, this is rather.
Adam and Eve going back to Eden.
I didn't realise how true this image would be. That in your head you're still kind of. Your aspiration is to be.
It looks like Fitzroy. Is that the front of the Fitzroy Park?
I don't know.
Eden is.
This is Aboriginals and just general drawings on Aboriginals and reconciliation. Terra Nullius has just been a box that's been opened and it's full of skeletons.
Yes, and I mean, as soon as they get here, there is.
Yeah, there's a sort
It
of
starts from the beginning.
help the guy that you
starts
just
from
run
the
over.
beginning.
Yeah. There's so many images that you can come up with. That idea of the stolen generation, I mean, it's become a much more complicated issue to discuss now because we came to the view that the major stolen generation events, which were based on racial grounds, were happening in the early to mid part of the 20th century. The later post-war ones were all much more to do with things like child custody issues, welfare issues. It becomes much more complicated to talk about the stolen generation as the century went on. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, but also the early ones, people weren't around anymore. You just couldn't actually meet people. You know.
Yeah. But anyway, the moment everyone was rather kept up.
That's beautiful idea of people as numbers, and it's the money just going straight through. It's just
then drugs. The idea. I actually said this. I wanted to put this in. Heroin is a perverse substitute for love. It always wants you and will never leave you. The drug should be decriminalised and the sad compulsion treated. Yeah, with heroin, you know.
Yep.
Because it's. This is more stuff on the drug.
Yep.
This is the
Pieta.
well, that's the Pieta. I mean, that's just. I mean, very, people don't see the needle or the.
I should have said apologies to Michelangelo because it's come straight from Michelangelo's Pieta, which is one of the most wonderful pieces of sculpture.
Yeah.
You should have put Michelangelo here. That's the only piece he signed. He really liked that piece.
Yeah.
This is one of my favourite illustrations of all time. That was about whale hunting and the idea of the whale becoming extinct and in the drama
and that's
of,
black and white,
of whaling. Yeah,
Right.
just mucking around with watercolour and washes is just something that you can have a lot of fun with.
Well, it certainly shows the politics of what happened with whaling.
Yeah, but I think also as an illustration, just as a painting, it's beautiful because with the use of watercolour, you can infer landscapes and storms and things in the distance which are just not there. But because of the medium, you're just sort of playing with it and very.
I think the best way to paint
becomes
water
very
is
atmospheric.
I think the best way to paint water is with watercolour.
This is more fun. This is an article about the genetic origins of
that's Adam and Eve.
Species, including the first cheetahs. So I just worked on Jura, and you have a lot of fun when you do things like that.
Jura's terrific, isn't he? Timeless.
This was we were all rabbiting on about the tallest building in the world, and I tried to sort of compare the world's tallest building with the
Grollo,
majesty of
the Grollo.
the majesty
That's
of
beautiful clouds.
And that's just VC. That's just a fantastic idea.
Take away.
Yeah, take away. Try for education.
These are just caricatures of favourite people to do.
He's a friend of yours, isn't
Mike
he?
Tyson in both of them.
Spinner.
So he had a lot of rip on the ball.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, these are the.
Did that get censored or anything?
No, that was just the idea of him of Hitler naked. I always feel like it's important to draw some people that are posturing, power and everything, to draw them in their natural state, and
Acknowledging war crimes.
Not acknowledging war crimes.
and there's Stalin at the altar,
Yes.
and Roosevelt being rather oblivious to what Stalin was really up to. Same like Hillary was rather oblivious to what he was up to.
Yep.
And there's.
That was the aftermath of the scandal where he was a rather reduced figure.
And the rabbit in the headlights, Monica Lewinsky.
Yeah.
And that's a bit unusual for you, isn't it?
That's very cool.
Oh God! And there's Castro as he got older. I enjoyed drawing him like that, being propped
again
up
by the system.
Yeah, and here's John Major, coming out of that that's the repeat of that image that I'd already done before.
Yeah.
This I really enjoyed doing
Isn't it
because
from
it's
a
a
famous photo?
the famous photograph.
Yeah.
That was a direct reference to that photo.
Yeah.
And
It's a pity they published that picture so small because that's a great picture.
that was the outbreak of the first Gulf War.
Yeah, and they've lost a lot of the colour in it. It's a lot more dense. Yeah, that's a
There's
terrific.
Saddam going off to war with his friend.
I reckon it's a better picture than the photograph.
Beautiful.
This is the Chechen War. It's just such a disaster. And here's alcoholism. We're running out of time. East Timor.
Wow,
That's really powerful.
it is.
And one of those favourite heroines of Aung San Suu Kyi.
Yeah.
Were,
Imprisoned.
a never-ending series of enclosures for her. The usual illustrators, the last resort is to go to that painting and see what you can do.
Yeah.
And fun with that. And of course, ultimately,
The opposite.
shoving him. as
You
a-
revisited this mishmash, this combination of Homer and Rembrandt a few times. It's a beautiful watercolor.
Richard Flanagan wrote a piece about how he tried to row a boat from Tasmania to, and halfway through it he was drowning, submerged, totally lost. Dark was descending, and he had visions of his own house, or he nearly died.
And this is after Goya?
This is using apologies to Goya. It was, I think, that was a giant on the landscape. And this is illustrating a story, I think, for Quadrant, edited by Robert Mann, about the rabbit plague.
Yeah. Very sensitive drawing of the rabbit.
That's probably the most important drawing I can think of, because that was when Keating announced the recession that we had to have. And I'm going down with a ship of free trade. Mike Smith was the editor of The Age at that time, and I gave him this drawing. This was going on the front page of The Age.
Yep.
And he said, look, I'm not quite sure whether you're right about this connection between this recession and free trade, but I'm going to run it anyway. They were the good old days. He was a great editor.
Take a punt.
And
I think he's got that picture, hasn't he?
I don't know. There's Blair as the child of Thatcher having his medicine forced on him. Prince Charles, rather dubious.
If you're giving the politics
It's
away here,
beautiful. Karl Marx.
I like doing this one of the end of the Politburo. There's
Yeah,
these sort of
the dinosaurs.
ghosts of dinosaurs on that thing.
Yeah. March of Time.
Yeah.
Strong comments. That's beautiful.
Good old Jeff.
Yeah.
And I always thought, maybe at the time I thought I was going too hard, because maybe the deregulation of the dairy industry was a good thing. Well, as it turned out, it was a mad cow disease that hit them. They never did well out of it.
you did a lot of different variations upon that.
But everyone did at the time. Everyone was having fun.
Well, you had his hair as the Opera House and everything. Sydney Opera House.
This was an illustration for about I can't remember, a tragedy or something, and I just did people fishing, and they're dragging up inadvertently caught mermaids.
Is that your favourite time of day in your paintings?
It's a nice one. This is towards over and by. This is an etching I did, which is hard to make out in this small format, but it was an etching of an aquatent. Towards
But
over
did you
on
put the
Bay.
wind in it?
The wind is in
Oh,
there.
good.
It's an implied wind.
Okay. We're running out of cartoons.
Is there etchings?
This is one of my favourite etchings. This was Squeaky Beach.
Aquatent.
And I've still got a deformed right finger from scraping, because this starts as a black plate,
And you
and
scrape
you
away.
scrape away the roughness of the plate to get white that won't take ink when it's printed.
Yeah.
So the white is a result of a lot of pain.
Can you show the doctors in the audience your finger again?
See, this is the finger. I would have been scratching with a metal knife to cut back the metal of the plate. And I love that place. That place, Squeaky Bay, down at Wilson's Prom, is just
It's
beautiful.
a dandruff-free zone down there.
Well,
Pretty windy.
as I said to you earlier,
Tell the water.
if you want an idea of the Aboriginals' loss, what they have lost, go to Wilson's Prom and see this incredible beauty and look at these middens. On the other side of this hill, there's a midden that's about 30 feet piled high.
What's
and
a midden?
A midden is a
Where they
collection
throw all the
Aboriginals
shells after eating.
used to sit and eat. And over generations, there's layers of shell and sand and shell and sand. And you just think, well, they sat for generations, thousands of years, looking at all this. Would have been very similar, and it's gone, lost.
They generally find them in caves, but, on the layers of the cave.
And these are some monoprints. Monoprints is where you paint straight onto the plate, and then you while it's wet, you rub it with the image to get your whites and that with a brush or a piece of cloth or whatever, tissue paper. And you get all these lovely textures.
Yeah, it reminds me of the potato eaters for some reason.
Well, these were a series of monoprints about the first fleet and the first settlement.
Very dense tones.
And do you know where the inspiration came from them? A photograph that I took of one of my daughters in a school play that didn't come out. Was at the end of the thing, there was a lot of double printing and it didn't expose properly. And I looked at it, I thought, I got this. We could do something, and so I converted it all into these things.
Well, inspiration comes from.
And that was a place that I love a lot. That's
many
another monoprint. I love Half Moon Bay down at Black Rock. It's a beautiful place. I've spent a lot of time there, and made me happy. That's Cerberus.
Wow, this is great.
It's all done. That's it, folks.
Okay, you want to sign it again, John? Or is the old? There we are. French with a T. Yeah, I found that the best cartoonists are all left-handed, haven't you, John?
You think, yeah? Okay.
Well, we can flip the film.
Yeah, well, this book is still around.
Yep.
It's sort of out of print, but where books are sold, second-hand books, you can still find it.
If you love illustration, if you love the power of illustration, you should pick up this book. This should be in your library.
There's a story and a lot of other stories in every cartoon and every picture.
Fantastic.
This is Jim Bridges and
France Cantor
and
John Spooner
saying, we'll see you next time.